So this is the practical application post, my episode titled Strategy for Combat with Shinzo Machida. This is a super special episode for me because I have done karate my whole life and Shinzo is a karate expert. For those that don't know, he is the brother of Lyoto Machida. Lyoto was a former UFC champion. You know, he helped to put karate on the map, in particular when it comes to cage fighting and UFC. But Shinzo was his coach. And Shinzo is also a very respected fighter himself. He had a lot of time in the ring, a lot of wins, a lot of knockouts, but a very respected fighter himself. So he has the experience of being in the ring firsthand. He has the experience as a coach at an elite level. He also trained with his father, who is a karate expert and a karate legend. So, he comes to the table with a lot of expertise and knowledge to be able to share with us all. A lot of the strategies that he shares are also in line with karate concepts and Zen and, things in that realm. So, just so you understand a little bit of that origin as well. When we're talking about strategy, strategy is pretty much a plan to be able to achieve a goal. If I'm trying to score a touchdown, how am I going to be able to do that? I'm going to create a play. I'm going to tell one person to go over here, almost like a chess game, right? You go over here, you fake, you come right, you go left. It's my plan to be able to achieve a goal. There's the physical, tactical side, which is more about like those chess moves. And then there's the mindset and the plan for achieving that goal mentally. What should I focus on when I go in that ring? What should I think about when I go into that arena to be able to perform at my best? So this episode is dedicated really to the strategy that's going on in your mind. What should we focus on and what should we think about to perform at our highest level? And while we use combat to be able to dive into the conversation because that's Shinzo's bread and butter, this can be applied in any scenario. If you're on the field and you're playing, an invasion game, if you are on the stage and you are dancing, if you're behind the podium and you're giving a public speech, anytime you want to perform at the highest level, this mindset or some of these mindsets and, shifting of your attention can be super important to help you perform at your best. So one of the first things I'll go over is Mushin. Mushin pretty much means that you want to be in the present moment. You want to avoid distractions. You want to avoid thinking about any expectations. You just want to be able to be in that moment so you can react at your best. A lot of times we go into a big competition or any type of elite level performance or high level performance, and there's tons of expectations to do well, right? Maybe your students are there watching you, your family, your friends, your significant other. Maybe there's some thoughts about, could I get hurt? Could I get an injury? There's maybe some fear, some worry. My opponent looks big and scary. There's this, there's that. I put in so much work. I don't want to let my coach down. They invested so much in me. There's all these different thoughts that could start running through your head. And Mushin is pretty much saying, let all of those distractions go. Avoid thinking about any expectations that could be placed upon you and just be there, be in the moment. In order to be able to do that, you kind of have to be in this playful mindset. So this is interesting here, right? You have to be in a very high pressured situation and you have to treat that high pressured situation very playful. You have to approach it as if it's not high pressure, as if it doesn't really matter. And, that almost seems like counterintuitive. It's like, wait. Aren't I supposed to be very serious in this moment? And sometimes what happens is if you're super serious and you're super tied to a certain type of outcome, let's say there's a certain move you were working on, right? If it is combat and you want to do just that move, it's like, oh, I worked this reverse punch. I got to do this one. I got to do it. You could be so narrow-minded and have so much tunnel vision that you don't see all the other things that are open to you. And I use the analogy of football also, right? It's like the play told me that I had to go right, but for whatever reason, something happened and they actually blocked the right side and now the left is open, and in that scenario I should go left. I should be able to, react on the spot. I should be able to have some flexibility and be able to adapt and see the scenario and, respond best for what it is. Now, the interesting part is, in order to be able to do that, you do have to practice extremely hard. So when it comes to the hard work, I think a lot of that happens in training. So when people say, a lot of fights are won before you even get into the ring, I wholeheartedly believe that. The hard work comes in training. What we do is we train scenarios, right? So, if the person does this, you do that. And I train that scenario again and again. If the person does A, I do B. If the person does C, I do D. And you train it, you train it, you train it, you train it super hard. You train it day and night, blood, sweat, tears, all that stuff. You work it super hard. Then the moment you get into that ring, you let everything go. And now you have to enter a state of this playful mindset. Like, it doesn't matter. Whether I win or lose, it doesn't matter. I have to be in there with this, with no expectations, pretty much. And when I'm in that scenario, I'm going to be able to react appropriately to whatever's in front of me. Whatever the opponent gives me, I'm going to be able to see the best option, or at least that's the best way for me to be able to see the best option. Because if you're too tunnel vision, if you're too narrow-minded, if you're too focused on one thing, you'll probably miss seeing the bigger picture. So your tunnel vision happens more so in training. If I'm practicing one of those scenarios, right? I'm practicing A and I do B. I have to just do that, and I have to do it again and again and again and again and again. Super rigid, super disciplined, super hard work. But when I get into that ring, I'm not thinking about when he does A, I have to do B. It should just happen. I practiced it so many times that if they do A, I just do B, just because my body should be on autopilot. It should, in karate, they say it seeps into your bones. And what they mean by that is you don't have to think, it just happens. If I literally shut my brain off right now and the person did A, B would just happen. It's almost like the intelligence just lives inside of my body. So the caveat here is you have to practice so hard that when you're in that scenario, your body naturally reacts with the thing that you want, right? So you're still working super hard in training, but when you enter that arena, you have to kind of be able to let it all go and pretty much in your mind say, like, winning and losing doesn't matter, and I have to enter this state of play. And when I'm in this state of play, I can see the scenario for what I could see all the best options and the best ways to respond to those options. So Mushin, again, is about being in the present moment. It's about letting go of the past and the future, letting go of expectations, letting go of distractions, and just being there and letting your body respond. All the training that you've done, let it respond and let it just happen naturally. I think another thing that happens is when people understand the value of being in the present moment, it's also easier to let go of those distractions. If when I would compete when I was young, I remember getting nervous. I remember sizing up the opponent and looking and saying, man, that guy looks big. Like, is he going to be in my division? I don't know. Is he whatever? And there's a certain point when I understood that that's not valuable for me. And, letting that go became easier. So I think just understanding the value of being in the present moment when you enter a high stakes arena is super important. It helps you to do that. But then another thing that you can do is strictly just practice that mindset. And one way to be able to do that is meditation. When I think about meditation, you could use it for a lot of different things, but meditation, one of the things for me is about focusing your attention on what you want to focus on. Right now I can think about, for example, breathing, right? I'm going to close my eyes, I'm going to sit, I'm going to do nothing else, and I'm just going to focus on my breathing. And while I'm there, I'm going to hear the horn beep outside, and I'm going to think, oh, I wonder who's beeping. Or I'm going to think, I'm kind of hungry. What should I eat for lunch? Or all these distractions and thoughts pop into my head, and I have to refocus my attention back onto my breath and just think about the breath. So In that moment, you're practicing choosing where you focus your attention. I also like the Huberman lab. Andrew Huberman says the space-time bridging. And what he does for that meditation is, I'm not going to remember it exactly to the T, but for the most part, it's you focus on something very close to you, such as, a spot on your hand, and you just focus on that one piece. Then you focus on something in the near distance, maybe 10 feet away, then the far distance, then the horizon, then the universe. But you're shifting your attention to different things, and you're choosing exactly which thing you want to focus on. And no matter what distraction comes your way, you're going to still choose to focus on that one thing. So meditation, space-time bridging, breathing, whatever, is an opportunity to train your mind to focus on what you want to focus on. And again, when you get into that ring, you're not going to focus on those distractions. You're going to just focus on being in the moment, letting it all go and letting your body respond with all of those things that you did in training. Okay, so the next big mindset is Fudoshin. And Fudoshin is the unshakable mind, or the immovable heart. And this one, you're thinking about your spirit. I like to think about the Rocky quote with this one, where he says something like, it doesn't matter how many times or how hard you could hit, but it's how many times you could get hit and keep moving forward. That's pretty much what Fudoshin is. It's saying, no matter how many things I throw at you, and life gets hard, or you're going after your goal and it seems further and further out of reach. Maybe I'm beating you down, maybe you keep losing, maybe there's all these things, you're like, damn, there's so much on me, I think that I actually can't do this. And Fudoshin is pretty much saying that no matter how hard it gets, no matter how many things we throw at you, you're gonna stay steadfast on whatever goal that is and think it's still achievable. Even in the worst odds, I could still do this. I still got this, right? Think about it. It's my heart. It's my motivation. It's my spirit. No matter how hard you try to break me, I'm not going to break. I'm going to stay focused. I'm going to have an immovable mind. I'm going to stay focused on what it is that I want to be able to do. And one of the ways that you can train that is, I love that, one of the things for training that is ice baths, actually, right? So pretty much an ice bath, or even a cold shower, right? Or a cold plunge or something like that. You're being faced with something that you don't want to do. And that could be mentally fatiguing. It's like, damn, I don't want to get in the shower. I don't want to jump into that cold water. But you know what? I'm going to have to push myself. I'm going to have discipline, and I'm going to have to go through it anyway. And what you're training there is you're training your discipline, you're training your heart, you're training your motivation, you're training your drive to be able to keep pushing forward even when things are trying to push you down, you keep going forward. So that cold water is the obstacle that is kind of fighting you down, and your mindset is going to have to pull you back up and say, nope, we're going in, we got this. Even when it's hard, even when it's tough, right, we can do it, we could keep pushing forward. So cold plunges, a good opportunity to train your mind to have Fudoshin. It also makes me think of the Thomas Edison quote where he says, I've never failed, I've actually just found 10,000 ways that didn't work. And that's Fudoshin in my mindset. It's like, no matter what, he had the indomitable spirit. He kept pushing forward. He said, no matter what happens, I can do this. And yeah, you might see it as failing, but I don't see it as failing. It's just a moment to be able to overcome in order to achieve my goal in the end. So Fudoshin is about having the heart, having the desire, having the motivation to keep pushing even when the odds are stacked against you and times are hard. You stay in the mindset of, I can do this. Last one I'll give you, just because, as I was thinking about this stuff, I just think about so many. When we were in the dojo, we used to always say the Martin Luther King quote. If you can't, again, I'm not going to say it to the T, but if you can't run, you can walk. If you can't walk, you can crawl. If you can't walk, and he's saying, whatever you do, keep pushing forward. And it's the same thing in this scenario. We would say things like, if you're, the opponent has you, even if you can move a finger, keep moving that finger. you never know what's going to happen, that the odds in the fight can change into your favor. And, maintain that spirit, maintain that heart, maintain that drive. So one more piece from the episode that I wanted to touch on, even though it's not directly tied to what you're focusing on when you're in the ring, but it just has to do with developing and fostering the mind, body, and spirit connection. And they call it Shin Gi Tai. So, a lot of times the main gist of this here is if you want to perform at your best, you have to consider intertwining all three into your practices. A lot of times nowadays you see that there's a lot of separation. So for example, fitness, right? There's this idea of training the body that has nothing to do with the mind or the spirit, or right? Drive, heart, motivation, all that stuff. Not saying you can't intertwine the two, but you'll see that there's a lot of disconnect with this idea of fitness and being this idea of just training the body and nothing else. You could think about the spiritual side of things, right? You see in some religions where the body is often neglected. There's this idea of if you invest in the spirit, you can neglect the body because the spirit is going to move on to the next world, right? Whether it's the spirit world, whether you're the ancient Mayans, whether it's Christianity, whether it's Judaism, whether it's ancient Egyptians, whether it's whoever. There's a lot of cultures have this idea of moving on to somewhere else after we die. And if you just invest in the spirit, like who cares about the body? Because the body's going to wither away anyway, but your spirit is going to move on with you into your next journey. So invest in the spirit, but neglect the body. And what we see though is that when you neglect the body and you think you can just invest in the spirit, a lot of times that's what leads to things like anxiety, depression, and you start thinking like, why don't I have the desire? Why don't I have the drive? Why don't I have the heart in these things? Well, the mind and the body and the spirit are all interconnected. You can't really train one in isolation. You can't just think about one in isolation. You have to have holistic practices that train all three. I think Shaolin monks understood this well, monks or Buddhist monks, right? You'll see that there's this idea of integrating mind, body, and spirit into the whole holistic practice, right? So Shaolin monks all trained Kung Fu. They had to be able to do some type of physical practice. Maybe it's yoga, maybe it's Tai Chi, maybe it's whatever. You had to master or train a physical practice in order to foster the spirit, and vice versa, back and forth, right? So anytime you want to achieve a place of enlightenment, or if you want to be able to perform at your highest possible level, you have to consider integrating all three into your practice. In karate, they don't just say karate, they say karate do. The word do means the way. Ju-do, ken-do. In Japanese, the word do is saying the way, and what it's saying is that this is not just a physical practice. This is not just about training your techniques. It's also about investing in the spirit and the way. It's a way of life. This is just a way that you live. So when it comes to things like Mushin, Fudo-shin, all these good practices, we talked about some other ones in the episode, Zanshin, all that. It's not just something you do when you're in the ring. This is the way that you live throughout life. Right? Being in the present moment in your day-to-day life is going to be very valuable. Having drive, spirit, when that alarm clock goes off in the morning and you choose to either let it keep going or get up and do what you have to do, but all of these stuff, all of the practices are more than just training of techniques. It's more about a way of life. So when it comes to elite level performance, I think people can benefit from being more holistic in their practices. Not thinking about things in isolation, like for example, I can just train the body or then train the spirit separately, but how am I training all these things and how am I bringing all three of these things into my practice? When you go into the arena for combat, because that's what the episode was mostly about, are you only thinking about techniques or are you thinking about your mindset? How do you foster your spirit? How do you foster your Fudo-shin and your drive? How do you practice Mushin and being in the present moment? Do you take time to do these things? Do you value these things? Are they a part of your training? I think any good performer in anywhere in the world is not just going to consider the body and their technique and the show that they're putting on, but they're going to consider what are they thinking about and how are they fostering their spirit to be able to put on the best show that they possibly can. So all high performers are integrating mind, body, and spirit and not thinking about them in isolation. And when they're really good, they're able to practice it and train it and live it all throughout their life, so that when they get in the ring, it becomes much easier to do. It's not just something they visit, it's something that they live. So those are a couple of my big takeaways for now. We went over a lot of other good stuff in the episode. We talked about shuhari, which is another piece about play. Again, zanshin, some other concepts were embedded in there. Chinzo had a ton of expertise and wisdom to be able to share. So tune into the episode. I hope you all appreciate it. Have a good rest of the day.